Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel Review Anything and Everything. And today we're getting into just a comparison video between the Tudor corner on your left and the boutique hotel on your right. These are both modular buildings. And I, not too long ago, just purchased and finished putting together actually the boutique hotel, which actually comes after the release of the Tudor corner, but the Tudor corner was the set I bought first. So link is going to be description down below for both of these on Amazon. So just doing a light comparison here and just kind of comparing like not only just the differences between the two and kind of how they what they come with and whatnot, but also what you could do with them. And viewing it from that standpoint of the different things that you can actually do with these sets. For other things like modifying or just in general what you would use the parts for if you were just going to do regular building and whatnot like that. With that also being said, I'm not going to go into heavy detail or depth with both of these sets because they've already been out for a long time and they have been already reviewed heavy. I've reviewed both of these already on the channel. So if you want to see a more in-depth review, you could do that. But a lot of people have reviewed these things over the time frame. So I'm not going to do that, but it's really just a lighthearted kind of talk and comparison between them. So, just heads up, this is being displayed in a way where these would never be connecting like this. Both of these have connecting points on your left-hand side right now, and then also behind them, if I'm not mistaken. So you have open street. Both of these are corner sets, and it's interesting that the only two sets I have are corner sets. But this side here you see in front of you, I'm gonna lower the angle a little bit. This side you see in front of you on both of these, and then the right side is both viewing sides. So if this was to be displayed in a connecting position with both of these, which I can't completely connect them right now, because if you look back on the review that I did of the boutique hotel, you would know that I used a base plate from a third-party company called Briks that raises it up to the height of a regular plate for the base and not one of Lego's base plates, which are shorter than that. So this would be a way that it could be connected if it was connected in real time and actually, being connected in its regular manner. That would be the way that it could look. And in that case, when you do it this way, what you're essentially doing is putting the secondary builds in the center, and then you're putting the main builds, which are entered in from the corners, on the side, which I actually think that this, if you only had these two sets, and for one, I just want to say too that I think that both of these sets architecture kind of lend to each other because they're both a little different, I feel, than the other sets. But if you had a display like this, that, like I said, the main entrances being the corner builds would be on the sides there. And, now the Tudor corner though, there's a lot more to see on the left side in this case because, this one's main build is on the left and the side build is on the right, where this one, the boutique hotel, the main build is on the right, the side build is on the left. But the main build really, since it's so corner orientated, there's nothing to see inside the front of it in terms of it's just wall. Let me try to get in here so I can push this. So it's just wall, and I'm going to put this on a slant as well, and you get a better sense of what I'm talking about. And this way you can see both of them in a better angle. So yes, that's the orientation in which a person would really want to see both of these. I'll just bring the camera back a little bit. So you could see this would be the orientation you'd kind of want to look at both of them, to be honest, because that's really the front of the building, and the front of this one's building is on the corner too. But nonetheless, you can see here, there's nothing on the right-hand side or this side of the building, and this one kind of has stuff on both sides. So, first thing I want to jump into, like I mentioned just a moment ago, is that the architecture of both of these things, though they're different, I think they lend themselves to each other in the sense that neither one of them feels like And when I say modern or if I say classical or anything like that, I'm not referring to older or newer Lego styles of building. I'm just referring to the architecture in terms of like the date of it or the time frame it would probably be in. I don't know specifically, but so both of them to me have a very creative, more older school kind of vibe to them, and not so much this modern city-like aspect to them, where a lot of the newer sets that were built in more recent years, some of the older sets too, but because of the older techniques, maybe didn't bring it out as much. But a lot of the newer sets have sometimes a more just modern feel, and they seem like they fit into like maybe like a big city, like a downtown city kind of area. Some of them where these to me feel a little bit like you could probably find these in a small village or like a small town to a degree. You know what I mean? Sometimes, depending on where you live, you've seen like small little villages outside of the main city, and they'll have those strips that often have the little lamps on them. And there'll be like this very old school, like village type of feel. And the Tudor corner could easily fit into that. I've seen places just like that in those type of places. And then, like, for example, there's a bagel shop in the neighboring town from me, and they have this kind of old school vibe, just like that look, and the sign on it just feels very old school, and it's down the strip of stores, that small strip for the little small town. And the boutique hotel, being that it's more of a dated but classical feel, could also be in that space, or it could be in the middle of a major city, because it could kind of do both. And I've seen it do both, that same kind of design. So that part I think is very interesting with the both of these. As far as, you know, what they bring to the table. Now, obviously, as a hotel, it's really just bringing 3 floors of a hotel. But what's interesting is this build, I think, first off, this set, I think, and in the review, at the ending of the review of this set, I have mentioned, so I'm just going to briefly go over the same thing, but you can go back to that to check as I try to display it a little bit with certain things, that as far as like taking it apart and this and that if you bought 2 sets of these, you would literally, without any modification, be able to stack the second, a second pink floor on top of this pink floor, and then a second green floor on top of the green floor. So you'd have pink, pink, green, green, and it wouldn't take much modification to make the last green, the second green floor, or what would be considered the 4th floor of the building at that point. It wouldn't take much to take the stairs and add a new set of stairs, so it goes from the green to the next green, because this green doesn't have stairs in it. But if you had a second build, you'd be able to take the second build's ground floor, take the steps, you make them spiral, small modification, doesn't even take much, and then now that extra floor of the green floor going to the green floor, you'll have steps for it. So essentially this hotel would now be 5 floors high, and you'd have a second build of just this base without the floors, and that same roof would be able to come straight down onto the base of this brick floor area. You'd be able to make that into some other store, whether it's a cafe, whether it's anything you could think of. And being that this set often goes on sale, hopefully by the time you're viewing this video, it still hasn't retired yet. You could do that. This thing is going on sale for $160 from its normal price of $230. And so if a person bought 2 of these sets, you'd literally be able to make a jumbo hotel with a side build of like a storefront, whatever you want to turn it into. And I think that's amazing, you know. And then obviously you'd have the art store, which you could turn it into something else on the second build. So you just imagine that one of this without the top floors, and then the second one of it just like this, but with 2 additional floors. That's one thing that's great about that set, in terms of there's less you could do with it in terms of altering one of the builds maybe, but getting 2 of the builds, they're stackable. Whereas getting 2 of this build, you can't really do anything like that, or most modular builds. And I'm not knocking the build, but just for the most part, you can't really do that. Alternative though, I would say as a set in general, this set will be good to, if you were good at customizing, you could turn this into an apartment building Yes, there are a lot of colors here that are polarizing, and you might have to kind of work around that. But just in general, this is a great setup to make an apartment building. And I think that that's something that Lego is definitely missing in the modular sets, where I think it would be nice if they did make a apartment building setup one day. Basic, nothing over the top, nothing too crazy, just a basic one that, similar to what I just said with the hotel, you could buy multiples and just keep stacking it up and then kind of formulate that. But like I said, if someone knew how to customize, you could build regular apartment buildings with this. This, on the other hand, I've demonstrated in another video where I turned the clockmakers. I've since put it back to as the clockmakers building, but the clockmaker, that floor, I turned it into an apartment. And that's the one thing I will say that is kind of customizable with this, is that you can turn that clockmaker's floor into an apartment, and it's very easy to do. If you check back at that video that I made, essentially what I did was I bought a Lego Friends set, and one of the Lego Friends rooms set, the gamer one, and I turned it into a room. Of course, the old man, you could imagine that the clockmaker decided to be the one to partake in that as like a gamer room. He's retired, this and that, and I did a little backstory for it, which kind of made it like if he was to rent out that room, he sold it, whatever the case is, he moved on to somewhere else, whatever. So you could check out that video. But essentially, that I was able to turn it into a room, so a person could do that where they have a room here and then you got a room here. Now, one thing I definitely would advise for anybody to do, which I kept from that build that I did, was, I'm just gonna move this over and just bring the camera over it because it's easier than me moving a whole bunch of other stuff. I turned everything back to normal, but I kept this wall here. And so when you come in this way, you got the clock there, just demonstrating that like outside in the general hallway, the common space hallway, that yes, you're about to enter the clockmaker's place. He's got a little clock on display, which is nothing wrong with that. But then this, which opens out that way, you would enter his place and you would come in. I had some extra bricks and a little bit of extra door frame. And so I did that. So that way his place is separate, because I never liked the idea that you have to walk through his space to go to his store. I wasn't a fan of that, to be honest with you. Yeah, I just really wasn't a fan of that at all. I get it. They just kind of do what they have to do to make it work and just be simple. But that really bothered me a lot, because realistically, who wants someone walking through their space like that? That's just wouldn't be good at all. But anyway, so I want to also do a couple other configurations on this, the way it would lay. He's not stuck into a spot. That's why that happened. So I showed it like this a moment ago, where they were put together like this, but then another option is putting the Tudor corner to come around this side. There's two connecting points in each thing. So technically you would have two different ways on that side as well. So I kind of skip that way of doing it. So maybe I'll have to come back around for that. But you've got this way where they would connect, and that could go into this like that, which honestly, that to me is, depending on the dynamic of your city, this could be kind of okay, because this kind of forms like almost this little alleyway. Like I said, I can't connect them right now because they're not leveled with each other. But it had almost this alleyway where it walks up the side of the apartment. Unfortunately, that makes this person seeing off their balcony over there pretty lame. The person who lives upstairs, which is this person, the cat lady. That makes it pretty lame in terms of that. But that little walking up the alleyway in between the buildings does look kind of nice, and it looks common because you've seen stuff like that before. The back way to get up to the apartment, but it's not the side corner area, because it wouldn't really you wouldn't really have that like that. So even though and when you think of it like that, to be honest with you, I would say the placement of that balcony area probably was a bad space. And I say that to say this dynamic of the setup actually works more so because like as a common build, because you wouldn't really have these steps just facing the open necessarily at a corner. That wouldn't necessarily work. So something's going to be connected there, because obviously since there's a corner build and the sidewalk has to continue, there's no sidewalk going down that way. So that wouldn't realistically be the way it would be displayed. Obviously something's going to be connected from this. So in theory, if it was something shorter than that, you'd be like, okay, cool. But if it's at that height, it kind of, does take away from that element there. And then the other way to display it, or is that just going to make it backwards? Let me see. Yeah, so that wouldn't necessarily work in that way either. That would just be putting it backwards the other way. So I think that, yeah, it's pretty much been displayed as well as it's going to be able to be displayed for the most part. And you obviously wouldn't display something like this. Not that it's all that bad looking, because now it looks like you're going down the little corner street of whatever's going on, but you wouldn't really display it like this. But I will say this though, based on the whole setup I had mentioned before about the Strictly Briks base plate, you could literally put a street here and connect them by the streets and not by the pegs. For the modular aspect, you could just connect them by the streets. You would just have to modify this a little bit, but to connect them by the street. So that is kind of something I was going for, of why I put it on that and why I plan on doing that again. But that's really about it. Like I said, I don't want to go through every little thing on the set, or the video is pretty long as it is. I just want to kind of display them together and say like the pros and cons of a person purchasing each set and like what they could do with them. What are the abilities that they could do with them? So that's kind of my thoughts there. As far as the minifigures go, they both essentially come with the same amount of minifigures, and I wasn't sure about that at first, but they essentially do. This one has one more minifigure, but it's just a suit. So there's really nothing you could do with that. Now, obviously you could get one of your Lego heads and then put, like that head on here, and then that be it. Make it a figure who's walking around, but then you'd be losing the store mannequin. But at the same time too, maybe you could just say someone bought the suit. So that's one thing. But as far as that goes, this has 8 minifigures total, and then that one has 7. But like I said, they both really have 7 usable figures. What's interesting though is being that this one has the white on, like it'd be white gloves rather than a mannequin. If you switch the head on this one and put it in there, you could say that this is the hotel manager, and then obviously the workers have the white hands as well because of their gloves. So you could do that. That would be interesting. For example, let's just have fun with this really quickly. Take the old clock guy, and we'll just say he used to work as the clock maker, and he decided to buy he looks so funny when he doesn't have he looks so young, I should say, when he doesn't have his beard on. You can see his face right there. He just looks like a regular young guy. Hold on. Okay, I can put the beard on upside down, but you could see here, he almost looks like the Monopoly guy, but yeah. So you could make it where, I just realized that doesn't work. Doesn't work because he's got 2 heads, unless you just put his hair on. So, but anyway, yeah, you guys get the point. So if you guys got any questions, just put them down below in the comments down below. And as always, you guys like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.